The heat of the Ashau Valley, 1968, wasn't just physical. It was a weight pressing down on every soldier, blurring the line between exhaustion and dread. Sergeant Alex Flash Keller didn't earn his nickname for speed. He earned it because, in the dark, he always had the light, a crucial detail in a jungle where visibility was a matter of life and death. They were deep behind enemy lines, pinned down after a disastrous extraction attempt, running low on everything but fear. Keller was sweeping a bombed-out French bunker, a relic from an earlier, forgotten war, when he spotted it, half buried in the mud. It was a flashlight, the standard military angle-head model, MX991U, but its casing was a strange, dull silver, not the expected olive drab. The metal felt impossibly cold against his sweat-soaked palm, a shard of ice in the oppressive tropical air, and it weighed far more than it should. He recognized the shape but not the material. It was like holding condensed moonlight, heavy and silent. He clicked the switch. Instead of a tight yellow beam, a diffused pale blue light spilled out, illuminating the bunker's damp interior with an ethereal glow. His radio man, Private Sam Jenkins, peered over his shoulder. "Hey, Flash, where'd you find that thing? Looks like something out of a sci-fi flick." Before Keller could answer, the silence shattered. The bunker entrance exploded in a hail of automatic rifle fire, dust, and shrapnel. "Contact! Take cover!" Keller shoved Jenkins behind a crumbling wall of sandbags, his heart hammering against his ribs. The blue light, now pointed at the chaos, seemed to warble, distorting the muzzle flashes into stretched, echoing streaks of fire. Keller needed to identify the enemy position. He flipped the light's filter, expecting red, but the entire jungle vanished. For a terrifying second, Keller wasn't in Vietnam anymore. He was standing on a concrete balcony, the air crisp and cold, looking down on a massive, graffitied wall. Snow dusted the ground, and above him, a red, five-pointed star shone down from a flagpole, while below, cars looked boxy and unfamiliar. The vision was agonizingly brief. A flash of the mid-1980s Cold War conflict that hadn't happened yet, before he was violently thrown back into the wet reality of 1968. He gasped, the smell of gunpowder overwhelming the lingering scent of stale concrete and distant diesel fuel from the temporal glimpse. "Flash, what's wrong? You look like you just saw a ghost," Jenkins whispered, covering him with his M16. "I saw the wrong year, Jenks," Keller muttered, staring at the flashlight in his hand, which was now pulsing faintly blue. He knew this wasn't fatigue or shell shock. The flashlight was an anchor, briefly connecting the 1960s to a decade ahead. He clicked the light off, and the immediate area felt strangely muted. The sounds of the firefight slightly distant, less urgent. They held the position for 20 minutes until the enemy broke contact, melting back into the impenetrable jungle foliage. Later that night, huddled beneath a monsoon tarp, Keller disassembled the strange flashlight. The lens was standard glass, but the reflector cone, the parabolic mirror behind the bulb, was engraved with microscopic, impossibly small script. The script wasn't Vietnamese or French. It was an ancient, angular script that looked like lines of solidified lightning. As he touched the engraving, the flashlight flared again, not projecting light this time, but projecting sound, a series of sharp, coded bursts. It was an arcane message, a temporal warning concealed not for the current war, but for the looming silent conflict of the Cold War era. His squad was eventually extracted by Huey, lifted out of the suffocating valley back to the base camp near Da Nang. Keller kept the flashlight hidden in his pack, no longer seeing it as a tool, but as a dangerous secret. Back at base, he showed the inscriptions to no one, but sought out the one man who dealt in secrets and old things, Mr. Jean. Mr. Jean was a retired French Foreign Legion scout. Now running a dilapidated antique stall just outside the perimeter, he was a man of indeterminable age, with eyes that held the cynical knowledge of every war fought in that unforgiving country. Keller approached him with caution, pulling the cold, silver flashlight from beneath his tunic. Jean didn't react with surprise, only recognition. He let out a low whistle and nodded slowly. "Ah, the lantern de l'anchor, the lantern of the anchor. I thought the jungle had reclaimed it long ago," Jean murmured. Explained that the relic was part of a magical containment system created centuries ago to prevent the reckless use of advanced knowledge. "It anchors time, Sergeant. It keeps a specific terrible message hidden within the moment it should be heard, not before." Jean explained, tapping the reflector. The message was locked, protected by temporal echoes, meant only for those in the 20th century who could access the final truth of the technology. Keller realized the horrible implication. The scepter-like flashlight was trying to warn his time about a mistake they were about to make. And who put the message there? Keller asked, his voice low. Jean simply pointed at the engravings. The keepers of the flow, and they will send a warden to retrieve it once the message is decrypted. As if on cue, sudden chill enveloped the bustling marketplace. The sun seemed to lose its intensity, and a familiar, menacing cold settled in. A tall man in a crisp, black suit clearly out of place in the tropical heat stepped out of the crowd, his eyes fixed on the silver flashlight. This was not a Vietnamese soldier or a local operative. This man carried the cold, bureaucratic scent of the Soviet KGB. His name was Major Kovac, and his mission was not to fight the current war, but to steal the future. Sergeant Keller. I believe you have something that belongs to the collective directorate. Kovac's English was perfect, laced with icy contempt. Keller grabbed the flashlight and bolted, knocking over a display of clay pots and alerting the nearby military police. Kovac didn't run, walked with unnerving speed, and as he passed, the tropical air around him seemed to solidify into razor-sharp shards of ice. Keller knew he couldn't fight this man in the open. Kovac wasn't just a spy. It was clearly the warden Jean had warned him about. Back in his barracks, Keller locked himself in, using a stolen magnifying glass to decipher the arcane script on the reflector. The language was complex, but the meaning was simple, conveyed through mathematical symbols and chemical formulae. The message warned against the creation of a specific class of miniaturized, unstable nuclear device, a device that would be deployed globally in the 1980s. This device, if detonated during a tense standoff, would not be a localized weapon, but a chain reaction trigger. The Cold War, which Keller had briefly glimpsed, would end not with a whimper, but with the Earth tearing itself apart. The message was the difference between a tense peace and a global, final annihilation. Keller needed to decode the final critical instruction on how to permanently disable the anchor before Kovac seized it. He realized the message was the weapon, and the flashlight was the bomb. He rushed back to Mr. Jean, finding the old man calmly sharpening a large, curved machete. Kovac is here. He is the warden. He wants the future's secrets, not for peace, but to win the war he's not even fighting yet, Keller panted. Then you must take the anchor to the place of the forgotten sun. Only there can the temporal flow be healed, John instructed, pointing east. Jean produced a detailed, hand-drawn map showing a hidden Buddhist temple deep in the mountains, a place of ancient mystical power. It is the source of the scepter's power, Sergeant, the anchor point. You must place it back into the earth, Jean said, handing him the map. Keller knew this was a suicide run. The jungle was hostile enough without a Soviet temporal assassin tracking him. He commandeered a jeep, driving it recklessly off base, under the pretense of an urgent supply run, the silver flashlight secured tightly in his glove compartment. He drove for hours, the humid darkness clinging to the jeep, the air growing colder with every mile he put between himself and the coast. Kovac's presence was a palpable, crushing pressure, a sense that the timeline itself was trying to stop him. At the base of the mountain range, Keller abandoned the jeep and continued on foot. Following the obscure, overgrown path marked on Jean's map, the ancient temple was stunning, a stone ziggurat half swallowed by the jungle, its architecture predating the Vietnamese, the French, and perhaps even history. He stepped into the temple's main chamber, where a natural column of quartz crystal jutted from the floor, reaching toward a hole in the ceiling. The quartz was the anchor point, the focus where the scepter's protective temporal magic was generated. Kovac was waiting. He was sitting cross-legged at the base of the crystal, perfectly still, his black suit untouched by the journey. A commendable effort, Sergeant, but the future belongs to those with the will to seize it, not those who merely observe it, Kovac said, rising slowly. Kovac raised his hand, and the air thickened, pulling Keller's rifle from his grasp and pinning it to the wall with frozen vines. The Soviet Union will guide the world to peace, Sergeant. But first, we need the plans for the enemy's final weapon, Kovac declared, stepping closer. This device guarantees nobody wins, Kovac. It just guarantees silence. Keller shouted, pulling the flashlight from his belt. He knew a physical fight was pointless. He had to use the scepter's own magic against the warden. Keller activated the flashlight, pointing the pale blue beam not at Kovac, but at the massive quartz crystal. The crystal reacted instantly, absorbing the light and amplifying the temporal energy tenfold, bathing the entire chamber in a shocking silent radiance. Kovac screamed as the amplified energy hit him, not with physical force, but with the crushing weight of awareness. The scepter forced the warden to witness the full, terrible future the device would unleash, the final, desolate aftermath of the conflict. Kovac collapsed, not defeated, but broken by the vision of a silent, dead Earth, where the flags of both the USSR and the USA were dust. Keller approached the stunned warden, his own eyes burning from the temporal overload, and spoke softly. "The message isn't for our armies, Kovac. It's for the scientists. It tells them how to stop it." Keller climbed the base of the quartz column, the scepter pulsing rapidly, its energy peaking. He remembered the final cryptic instruction from the reflector: rejoin the flow at the source. He lifted the flashlight high above his head and brought the cold silver casing down with devastating force onto the quartz crystal. The impact wasn't loud. It was the sound of existence folding. The quartz column shattered into a million sparkling fragments. The scepter, the lantern, Delanker instantly cracked, the light dying, the temporal magic bleeding out into the earth. A wave of intense normalcy washed over the temple. The air regained its tropical humidity. Sounds of the jungle rushed back in. The temporal magic was gone. The message was released into the flow of time, no longer bound by the artifact. Kovac, weakened and confused, scrambled up, staring at the destroyed quartz. He was no longer the warden, just a spy who had lost his target. He fled, realizing his mission was over. The prize either won or lost by forces far beyond his government's control. Keller stood alone in the ruins of the temple, the broken flashlight cold and inert in his hand. He had saved a future he would never see, sacrificing the key to stopping the current war to prevent a global one. He walked out of the jungle the same way he came in, exhausted, alone, and marked by a secret he could never share. The message hidden in the Vietnam flashlight was not for the 1960s. It was a desperate letter from tomorrow, delivered across time. Keller finished his tour, but he never forgot the snow on the Berlin Wall, or the silent earth he almost witnessed. The secrets of the 20th century's magical history are deeper than you know. What was the exact formula on the reflector? Could Alex Keller ever truly stop the Cold War? Write your opinions below in the comment box. Like, share, and subscribe to Storycraft Studio.